Welcome to the ultimate cartoon movie hub. From timeless classics to the latest hits, we bring the best of animation to your screen. After the tragic loss of his father, a teenage prodigy crafts a groundbreaking suit of armor to uncover the truth behind the culprit. But little does he know, this journey will transform him into a superhero. Today, we're diving into the story of Iron Man, Armored Adventures from 2009. At just 16 years old, Tony Stark, a genius inventor, is already creating super advanced armor. Eager to impress his father, Howard Stark, Tony unveils his latest creation. Howard, the billionaire founder of Stark Industries, is Tony's hero. But just as father and son get a rare moment to connect, Stain barges in, furious. Why? Howard refused to weaponize a technology designed to help people, a decision that cost the company millions. Over lunch, Howard confides in Tony about the McLuhan rings, ancient Chinese artifacts rumored to possess magical powers. Howard suspects they're actually advanced technology, light years ahead of anything on Earth. At an archaeological site, Howard hands the ring over for research, but on their flight back, disaster strikes. While Tony steps away, Howard receives another heated call from Stain. Seconds later, their aircraft explodes. Only Tony survives. Fast forward 6 months. Tony, now reliant on a heart reactor to stay alive, lives with Rhodey's family. Stark Industries is under Stain's control until Tony turns 18. But when Tony notices Stain wearing Howard's McLuhan ring, his suspicions ignite. At school, Tony meets Pepper, whose FBI agent father is investigating Stain. Connecting the dots, Tony realizes Stain has much to gain from his father's demise. Determined to uncover the truth, he teams up with Rhodey. In a secret lab, Tony dons his Iron Man armor, ready to spy on Stain. But things escalate quickly. While hacking into Stark Industries' systems, Tony discovers Stain has turned his father's life-saving tech into weapons. At the same moment, Rhodey calls with urgent news. A runaway train is on a collision course with Stark Tower. Without hesitation, Tony springs into action. He diverts the train but faces a new problem. It's hurtling towards the city. In a desperate move, Tony slows the train, using every ounce of energy in his heart reactor. When that's not enough, he minimizes the damage by separating the wagons and saving countless lives in a breathtaking display of heroism. Overnight, Iron Man becomes a household name. But for Tony, it's more than fame. Inspired by his father's dream, he vows to use technology to save lives. Meanwhile, Stain races to replicate Tony's armor as weapons, and a shadowy figure, Mandarin, schemes to reclaim all the McLuhan rings. Among his adversaries is Gene Khan, who clashes with his cruel stepfather, and learns Stain possesses one of the rings. Back at school, the buzz around Iron Man is electric. Everyone has theories, and Pepper reveals that the FBI suspects this mysterious hero might be part of a secret military experiment. Little do they know, Iron Man is just getting started. That day, Tony takes on Stain's terrifying diggers, determined to dismantle them before they wreak havoc. But things take a deadly turn. He becomes their primary target. The colossal machine fires at Iron Man, then attempts to crush him under its massive claws. But Tony's armor proves unbreakable, withstanding the attack. Just as he catches his breath, 2 more diggers appear, boxing him in. Trapped, Tony quickly deploys an energy shield to hold off the relentless machines. Surrounded and outnumbered, he calls on his thrusters to make a daring escape, all while unleashing laser beams to counter the diggers' attacks. During the battle, the excavator's power source becomes overloaded, and the scientists who are part of Stain's team say that nothing can be done to prevent the explosion. Suddenly, a bright portal opens in the control room, and Mandarin appears to take the ring, then gets rid of the security guards who are trying to stop him. Terrified, Stain tries to find out why the monster is visiting, and immediately gives him the ring. While talking to Tony, Roy reveals that if those things explode, the whole of New York will disappear from the map. In an attempt to prevent the machines from exploding, the young man uses his own suit to absorb the energy from the core and needs to release it somehow. So he takes the opportunity to destroy the other diggers with his laser beam. Mandarin then appears, and after being knocked down, Iron Man attacks him. Seeing the McLuhan rings on his enemy's fingers, Tony is curious to find out who he is, but his armor is blown off by a huge pulse of energy. When Mandarin leaves, Stain shows up and tries to convince the superhero to work for him, but Iron Man immediately refuses. Upon returning to his hideout, Gene Khan is feeling unstoppable after his big win. He's now got Mandarin's armor and has locked up Zhang. Hungry for power, Gene plans to collect all the missing McLuhan rings. The next day, Tony visits Zhang's import store, but instead of Zhang, he meets his godson Gene. Tony asks about the McLuhan rings and mentions that his dad kept a diary with all the secrets about the artifacts. Gene, pretending to be helpful, tells Tony his stepfather is out of the country and promises to help later. But in truth, Gene has other plans. He enrolls in Tony's school to keep an eye on him and steal Howard Stark's diary. At school, Pepper notices the new guy, Gene, but can't quite place where she's seen him before. After class, Gene heads to his limo, but is suddenly exploded. Tony and Pepper are nearby and pull him out just before the car explodes. But before anyone can catch their breath, a van pulls up, and soldiers from Magia appear. They kidnap Gene, Tony, and Pepper, planning to use Gene to blackmail his stepfather. Meanwhile, Rhodey rushes to Tony's secret lab. The captives are taken to an abandoned warehouse, where Tony learns from a thug named Killer Shrike that Gene is the leader of a rival gang called the Tong, and the Magia are at war with them. Pepper suddenly remembers where she's seen Gene before. His stepfather is a dangerous criminal in the Chinese underworld. While trapped, Tony secretly sends a signal to Rhodey. Using remote control, Rhodey activates the Iron Man suit and sends it to Tony's location. As the suit arrives, the soldiers start shooting, but Tony gets the chance to put on the armor. Now it's game on. Iron Man takes down the criminals one by one. As the chaos unfolds, Gene and Pepper search for a way out, but Tony gets caught off guard by one of the thugs. Wounded and cornered, Tony struggles as the enemy takes aim with a laser, ready to strike again. However, just as Iron Man was about to be defeated, he releases energy from the reactor in his chest and throws his opponent away. Finally, the young man pushes Shrike out of hiding, and the two continue their duel as they fly over New York. At that moment, the villain uses electricity to overload the reactor attached to Tony's body. But the young hero manages to destroy Shrike's flying suit, causing him to suffer a huge fall. When Tony hears police sirens approaching, he gets out of his armor and asks Rhodey to fly his suit back to the lab. Tony then joins his classmates to avoid suspicion. Even though he comes out unscathed, Khan is unwilling to let the criminals go unpunished and decides to capture them. The next morning, Tony investigates one of Stark Industries' laboratories and is attacked by a man wearing white armor that freezes things. When he realizes Iron Man doesn't work for Stain, the attacker stops shooting and introduces himself as Donnie Gill, a former Stark International employee. Donnie explains that he spent years researching cryogenics for Stain, only for Stain to try to weaponize his work. Donnie broke into the lab to retrieve his research and use it to bring Stain down. Discovering Blizzard's true intentions, Tony offers to help, but Rhodey advises caution since they don't know if Donnie can be trusted. To verify his claims, Tony asks Pepper to look into Donnie's criminal record. That night, Iron Man meets Blizzard again and decides to help him rebuild the weapon Stain created. Meanwhile, Pepper sneaks into her father's office, steals his laptop, and uses the FBI system to check Donnie's history. She discovers Donnie was recruited by Stain while in prison for stealing technology and conducting illegal experiments. Suddenly, Stain's security guards appear and surround Donnie and Tony, who are attempting to steal the reactor core. Iron Man begins devising a plan to escape, but Blizzard freezes the guards. Luckily, the guards survive, and Tony manages to save them. Furious, Tony forbids Donnie from harming innocent people, but Blizzard attacks him. At that moment, Blizzard freezes Iron Man's suit, but Tony frees himself and escapes as his reactor battery runs low. After recharging his suit, Tony goes after Donnie, who has found Stain and eliminated all his guards. Donnie finally confronts Stain, but Iron Man intervenes, crashing through the window and attacking him. Despite taking multiple hits, Blizzard is more powerful than ever thanks to the weapon Tony helped him build and uses its power to freeze Stark Tower. However, before Donnie can complete his plan, Iron Man destroys his equipment, causing Blizzard to freeze himself. Before leaving, Iron Man receives a chilling message from Stain, who claims to be monitoring his every move and vows to uncover his true identity. The next morning, Pepper tells her friends she's worried about her father, who has been acting strangely about a case he's working on. During class, an FBI agent arrives and informs Pepper they need to talk, making Tony uneasy. The truth is that Rupert was brutally beaten the previous night while investigating and is now in the hospital. When he wakes up and sees Pepper, he reveals it was Mr. Fix who attacked him before losing consciousness again. That night, Pepper accesses the FBI database to investigate the person who hurt her father. However, Mr. Fix detects the search and sends his men to eliminate her. After hearing her house being broken into, Pepper escapes and calls Tony for help. Upon learning she's being chased, Tony dons the Iron Man suit and rushes to her aid. Meanwhile, Rhodey provides Pepper with coordinates to evade her pursuers. Just as Pepper is cornered and about to be attacked, Iron Man arrives, rescuing her and sending her to hide at Rhodey's house. When Mr. Fix's men encounter Iron Man, they flee. However, Mr. Fix hacks into Pepper's phone, discovers her location, and sends his men after her again. During the escape, Pepper is rescued by Iron Man, and her suspicions that Tony is the superhero are confirmed. She is taken to Rhodey's house where she finds him in chains. Seeing her, Black Whip frees Rhodey but is attacked by Iron Man. During the battle, Black Whip strikes Tony, causing him to collapse. At that moment, Pepper and Rhodey try to find a hiding spot. But the villain appears, capturing the young hero while the others watch helplessly. Pepper takes the opportunity to get help and discovers Iron Man's armor empty. Soon after, Black Whip approaches, and just as he is about to eliminate her, Tony appears in a new suit and attacks him. During the battle, the warrior sent by Mr. Fix once again proves to be stronger than his opponent. However, while enduring the hits, Tony channels all the energy in his armor into a single powerful shot, hurling Black Whip into an electric pole. The villain's costume explodes upon contact, immediately eliminating him. Now that Pepper knows her friends are working together to fight crime, she decides to join the team and help Iron Man in his mission to become New York's greatest superhero. One day, after saving the city once again, Tony spots a meteor falling on a road under construction. Fortunately, no one is hurt. Suddenly, a robotic creature emerges from the crater and hurls a vehicle toward a newspaper's helicopter. Just in time, Iron Man appears, saves the reporters, and goes after the robot. However, he is struck with a powerful punch that sends him flying. Furious, Tony retaliates, firing laser beams at the creature, only to have them repelled by the Scarlet Dynamo armor. Realizing the villain is heading toward the city, Iron Man engages in close combat, but his punches have no effect, and he is quickly overpowered. After being trampled by Scarlet Dynamo, Tony loses consciousness for several minutes. When he wakes up, Tony notices a symbol on his opponent's armor and asks Rhodey and Pepper to investigate its meaning. While his friends conduct their research, Iron Man flies at high speed to confront the robot again, managing to bring it down, though the armor remains undamaged. Pepper uncovers that the symbol belongs to Project Pegasus, and the serial number traces back to a suit of space armor once belonging to Ivan Vanko, presumed dead 2 years ago during a space mission. As Pepper explains the findings, Iron Man is ambushed by another attack. Scarlet Dynamo hurls a fuel truck at him, trapping him underneath. The robot attempts to blow up the truck, setting Tony's suit ablaze. In a desperate move, Tony flies out of the atmosphere to cool the flames and then returns to Earth. Following an address provided by Pepper, Tony meets Harkov, a space scientist who worked with Ivan during the ill-fated mission. Harkov reveals that Ivan's suit was struck by a solar flare, launching him toward the sun. Despite Ivan's attempts to reconnect, the team couldn't rescue him as they had to abandon the mission to save themselves. Left behind and presumed dead, Ivan harbored a deep resentment, blaming Harkov for his abandonment. When Scarlet Dynamo approaches Harkov's mansion, the scientist activates all his defense mechanisms, but none are effective against the enemy, who is consumed by a thirst for revenge. To stop Dynamo, Tony requests a blueprint of the armor and asks his friends to locate Ivan's family. While Iron Man stalls the robot, Pepper reaches Isabella Vanko, Ivan's wife, and convinces her to help calm him down. Meanwhile, Tony continues his battle but is eventually shot down. Just as Scarlet Dynamo is about to eliminate Harkov, Tony rises once more, using the last of his energy to stop the attack. However, it is the sight of his wife and son that ultimately calms Ivan. He steps out of his armor, which is promptly confiscated by the police, bringing an end to his rampage, all thanks to the efforts of Tony and his friends. Tony once again manages to prevent the entire city from being destroyed and takes the opportunity to take a nap while his suit's autopilot takes him back home. On ordinary days, Tony Stark doesn't even try to act like a normal kid and is always looking for trouble. During one lesson, he follows the police radio and leaves the classroom when he hears about cars chasing a criminal who has broken a hole in a bank vault. Living Laser moves at such a high speed that it is impossible to keep up with his movements, and not even police bullets can hit him. However, with his first shot, Iron Man immobilizes the criminal and manages to remove the vest that grants him his superpowers. Seconds later, the police cars arrive and Parks is arrested. When Tony returns to his laboratory, he begins researching the teleportation device Parks used and discovers it was originally designed by his father. The prototype, however, had flaws that made it unstable, which is why it was stored in Howard Stark's safe. Realizing it had been stolen, Tony grows suspicious of Stain and decides to investigate the safe. He knows that if his father's weapons fall into the wrong hands, innocent lives could be at risk. That night, Parks begins to feel ill in prison. His body releases a surge of energy, and using his newfound powers, he escapes and challenges Iron Man to a battle. Spotting Living Laser on the big screens in Times Square, Tony rushes to get his suit to prevent harm to the city's residents. During the fight, Iron Man realizes that Living Laser is even faster than before and tries to convince him to accept help, warning that the energy modifying his body could be fatal. Parks refuses and intensifies his attacks, absorbing energy from the city to turn his body into a weapon. He attempts to destroy Iron Man's armor, but Tony alters his suit's energy frequency and fires a precise shot. This causes the cells in Parks' body to collapse, and he is pulverized. After completing his mission, Tony hurries to the theater and manages to arrive just in time to perform in a school play with Pepper. The following week, Tony creates an invisible armor to infiltrate Stark Tower without being caught by security cameras. He reaches his father's safe, only to find all the weapons have been taken. Suddenly, his armor systems shut down because the invisibility feature drained its energy. Tony is forced to leave the building to retrieve energy cells and recharge his suit. However, while climbing the stairs, he is surrounded by security guards and taken to Stane's office. Fortunately, Whitney, Stane's daughter, is present and helps Tony leave. Furious, Stane orders his guards to search the entire building to uncover why Tony broke in. Desperate, Tony meets his friends in the lab, and Pepper devises a plan to recover the armor. The next morning, Tony calls Trisha, his father's former secretary, and asks her to authorize a school trip. When the students arrive at the building, Tony is stopped by security. He passes his backpack to Rhodey and pretends to leave. Outside, he reveals to Happy that he has been expelled for no apparent reason. Enlisting Happy's help, Tony distracts a security guard with a basketball and sneaks back into the building to find Rhodey. When Stane realizes Tony has infiltrated the tower, he orders all exits to be blocked and deploys an army of guards to find him. Despite an exhaustive search through nearly 90% of the 110-floor tower, the guards find nothing. Meanwhile, Tony and Rhodey manage to open the vault door, triggering an alarm, but quickly close it behind them. As Tony recharges his armor, Stane's drones break through the door. Iron Man springs into action, destroying the drones with his laser beam. After securing Rhodey, Iron Man opens a new passage and dodges the pursuing drones. Flying to the top of the tower, Tony eliminates the last of the machines and separates from Rhodey to avoid suspicion. After leaving the tower, Rhodey rejoins Pepper and the other classmates, proudly revealing the plan's success. Meanwhile, Stane, furious about the breach and his inability to uncover Tony's objective, personally searches for him. To his surprise, Stane finds Tony calmly studying on the school bus. So, what did you think of this series? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more series recaps. See you next time.